September 11, 2001 is a day that changed American society forever. The terrorist attack on the World Trade Center buildings was the most horrific event to happen in our lifetime. The attacks left the American people with a feeling of insecurity. At the same time, it brought the nation to a great unity. We can quote from Listening is an Act of Love. In the aftermath of September 11th, you could not walk past a person without greeting them. We didn't honk our horns impatiently at each other. We wished each other a safe trip home and a peaceful weekend. 5 years later, we are right back where we were on September 10th, 2001. But to me it's worse, because we should know better. Somehow we lost that connection we had. Through this great disaster, our nation found a unity for the greater good of our country. We as Americans exited the cave. I was sitting at my desk in English class when there was an announcement for the whole school to report to the auditorium. There was some stirring amongst the teachers even, which we all thought unusual because they are usually trying to keep the student body calm and quiet. I was in 5th grade, my first year of middle school. When all the students in middle school got to the auditorium, our principal informed us that there had been an accident. She asked that if you knew your parents worked in the World Trade Center, to please report down to the office. The feeling stirring in the auditorium now was that of curiosity and concern. It was only about 10 minutes later that our principal got back on stage and told us that the accident had been a plane that crashed into one of the Twin Towers. She also told us that a second plane had done the same, crashing into the other tower. She said that this was not an accident anymore, and that we were under attack. This sent a nervous buzz around the auditorium, but not too many concerned themselves with what it was, because we didn't know the severity of what was going on. At recess, my mother came to see me through the fence and told me a little bit more and asked if I wanted to leave school, but I decided to stay for the rest of the day. My grandma picked me up after school, and when I got home and was watching the news, she was crying. I was more scared now than I had been about the situation up to this point. After watching the news for just a couple minutes with my mother and grandma, I was realizing the graveness of what was happening. I felt scared for our nation and for what could come from this. It made me very uneasy.
I was in Miss Vandervelt's 5th grade class at Roosevelt Elementary School. I remember sitting in class and another teacher running in and pulling Mrs. Vandervelt out into the hallway. They had a brief meeting. The expression on my teacher's face let me know that something had happened. No student was told what was going on outside the school walls. During lunch, we were told that we couldn't go outside due to high bee population. After lunch, kids began getting pulled out of class one by one. I thought nothing of it. Soon the final bell sounded and I walked out to the bus. I was one of 4 kids on the bus. We all looked around in amazement to see the bus this empty. When I stepped off and began to embark on my walk home, I was met by my older brother. He hustled me home to where my father was waiting. My father acted as though nothing was happening. We finally reached my grandmother's restaurant, where we went every day after school. I reached for the remote to the television to change to my favorite after-school program. I was quickly reprimanded for my actions. All I remember hearing is, "There are no cartoons today. This is a time of remembrance." After hearing that, my mother quickly hurried over and sat my brother and me down. She explained to us what had happened. I was too young to clearly understand, but all I knew was this wasn't going to turn out well. My family and I drove to a house in my town. I had no idea where we were going. All I knew was that my parents had food for the family that lived there. We approached the house and rang the bell, and that's when this all hit home for me. A person who I had grown up with lost their father. He was in the tower when it was hit. The family was devastated and no one could console them. This brought the whole action into perspective for me. We no longer lived in a bubble. We no longer can shelter from the rest of the world. We were brought into the light of fear and terrorism. To this day, I will never forget that we cannot take for granted what we have, because on any given day, someone can take it from us.